Hey you guys, it is me, Laura. I am a homeschooling mom to 3 kids, ages 3, 8, and 10. And today I thought I would share a little bit with you about how I create unit studies and how I plan. So initially, I wanted to do a plan with me video to plan the unit study with me. I'm working on getting together a middle ages unit study, and I thought it'd be fun to plan with you guys. But the reality is that I am all over the place. I do not just sit down and plan a complete unit study in one go and then make it happen. I have my plan for the year and I work on it in bits and pieces, and I'm kind of working on them all a little bit at once. And then obviously the ones that are coming up sooner, I put more emphasis in and make sure that it's done. I try to stay about one unit study-ish ahead. So for example, this week we will be wrapping up one unit study and we'll be beginning our Thomas Edison and Inventions unit study the following week, and that will last, I think that one's a 4-week study, but I'm already almost done with the Middle Ages unit study, which will come next. So I still have that footage if you guys are interested in kind of seeing my process and how I do things, but it is really kind of all over the place and a big jumbled mess. I'm happy to share with you that if you're still interested. But in the meantime, I thought I would just kind of walk you through the basic process of how I do a unit study. Step number 1 is to pick a topic, and there are a number of ways that I can do this. One of the main ways is I pull topics from our history curriculum and build those into complete unit studies. So some ideas from this year are, we're going to be doing a unit study on light and sound and sight and hearing, and all of that springs from, there's a couple chapters in here on Helen Keller, and there's the next unit study that we're doing, we're learning about Thomas Edison and inventions, and in here we will be reading about Thomas Edison and Alexander Graham Bell. So we just kind of go throughout here, and I will get ideas from here to build unit studies on. Another place that I will get ideas is from my kids, things that they're interested in learning about. For example, the Middle Ages unit study that's coming up. And I will try to pick topics either that they say, hey mom, I want to do a unit study about this, or topics that are particularly interesting to them that I've noticed that they've had a big interest in. And the last place that I get ideas from is if I read a really good book and I think my family's really gonna love it, and so I'll turn that into a literature unit study. And an example of that would be an upcoming unit study that we're going to be doing on the book Braver, A Wombat's Tale. It is so good, and I know that the kids will love it, and I can't wait to share that with them. So we're just gonna turn that into a unit study. Step number 2 is to find a good read aloud. So for me, this is really the hardest part of any unit study. I am extremely picky about the read alouds that we do, and over this past year, because I've just been starting with unit studies and don't really have a backlog and haven't had time to really find all the books that I want to, because the ones that we're doing read aloud, we're going to be building so many memories and just doing so much with those books. I want them to be good books from a literary standpoint. I want them to be solid from a perspective of, these are the things that I want my kids spending their time listening to and learning about. I generally have to preview multiple books before I find one on the topic that I really like. Sometimes it's super easy and just falls into place, but that's pretty rare. That's kind of the most time-consuming part for me, and a lot of times that's my make or break for a unit study. If I can't find a good read aloud, I will table the unit study for later, and kind of everything really revolves around that. So that is the most important thing that I do second. And then third, once I have found a good read aloud, I will pick my nonfiction spine. And what I'm doing with that, if it's from here, this will be a lot of the nonfiction spine. If I can tie it into science, first place I'll go for any science kind of spine is the God's Design series, and I'll tie in any science that matches with that. Sometimes there's not something from either one of these. For example, the Middle Ages unit study. So for that, I'm using an Usborne book called Medieval World, and I will find a good nonfiction spine that kind of covers our history, science aspects in a little bit more detail. Step number 3.5, because it's not really a huge deal, is once I've got my spine and once I've got my read aloud figured out, then I can go ahead and schedule and figure out how long the unit study is going to take. We do a 4-day school week, so I try to schedule unit studies that take between 12 and 24 days. So 12 days would be a 4-week unit study, 24 days would be a 6-week unit study. I find that anything shorter than 12 days isn't enough for us to really get into them, and anything longer than 24 days is really too much. And I try not to make exceptions about that, but if I need to, I'll tweak slightly, but that's kind of my goal, between 12 and 24 days. And I'll do that by breaking up our read aloud or breaking up our nonfiction content and just kind of sandwiching them together. And depending on the nonfiction content and the reading content, sometimes I'll go from, like if it's a literature-based unit study, I'll break up the book that we're reading and I will go based on that. If it's more of a content-driven unit study that I have a read aloud to go with, then I will break up the content that we need to cover and then break my read aloud up so that it matches roughly that time frame. Step number 4, after I have my read aloud, I have my nonfiction spines, I kind of know how long I'm going to want this unit study to last. I start making a list of books at my local library. So this is when I start looking for books that are great for our book basket or books that my kids might want to read, things that will enhance the unit study. I'll look on Amazon, I will look on YouTube, I will search online, and I will just try to find books. And then I go to my library's website and I create a list. So on my library's website, you can create your own little lists based on whatever you want. So I'll make a list for each unit study that I'm planning. And as I find books that I think will be really good for our book basket that the kids might enjoy, I will add them in there. And I try to make sure that I have books that cover the topics generally. For example, in inventions, we're going to be talking about different inventors. So I have books about different inventors. I have general books about inventions in there. I also have books about electricity because we're going to be studying electricity in science. And I try to have anything attached that I think the kids might be interested in. I try to think of any rabbit trails they might want to go on and just put as many books as I can in that list and build it over time. The 5th step for working on my unit study is planning my materials for Morning Basket. So for Morning Basket, we like to have a trivia game, and if I can get trivia type questions or something along those lines that matches our theme, I will use that. If I can't, then I'll just grab a random Professor Noggin and throw it into our Morning Basket. I also like to do some kind of logic game. Now, usually these are one-player games, intended to be one-player games, but we solve the puzzles together as a family. And then we will have our read aloud in the basket. And sometimes I will do devotionals that match the theme. And sometimes if they're not just real easy, I'll just move forward in whatever else that we're doing. Step number 6 is working on finding videos to watch to go along with what we're doing. And I will, at the very minimum, I will put together a YouTube playlist that my kids can watch during their screen time where they can learn more. I might find some documentaries or some other things that I might weave into our actual school day as well. But I also will try to come up with a unit project. So this doesn't have to be like one project throughout the unit, but basically this is keeping in mind that at the end of the unit study, I like to have things that the kids can go back and look on and see what they've accomplished and see what they've learned. And that not only is a natural way for them to review what they've learned, but it's something that they're really proud of at the end of the unit. So an example of this would be when we did the Civil War a while back, we did the history pockets for that from Evan Moore. The kids still love looking at those projects and seeing what they did. It might not be one main project, it might be some little projects that we put together in a portfolio, but just some kind of hands-on creative way to be using what we're learning. Step number 7 is incorporating writing and grammar. So there's a couple ways that we do this. We do this through Copywork, which comes from the books that we're reading. Now, right now, I pick the Copywork passages, and I would like to get to the place where my kids can choose whatever Copywork passage they want, but we'll tie in whatever we're learning from Grammar Galaxy, or if there's a grammar that is program or printable or something that I can find that's theme-based, we will use that instead. I don't worry about covering grammar in any kind of systematic sort of way. but they really love Grammar Galaxy, so we use that. We'll look for examples of what we're learning in the book that we're reading and in our copywork. And I will also pick some vocabulary words for them. I think I'm going to start giving one blank one, but I usually have 5 choices for them. Vocabulary words that come either from our nonfiction selection or from our read aloud, and they pick the word that they want to do, and then we have different activities that we do for that throughout the week. But I go ahead and pick those words. I go ahead and see what grammar we're going to be working on and try and pick copywork passages that help us to tie that all together, to learn more about the grammatical concept or the literary device or whatever it is that we're learning. And for this section, if there is an arrow or a dart guide to go with the book that we're using from Brave Writer, I will typically use that just because it saves me time, and oftentimes we can have a little bit of a richer experience because I'm still learning how to create those types of studies. Once I've got my grammar and my copywork and all of that figured out, a new thing that I'm starting to add into my unit studies is math. We are, for one of my children, still going through math lessons for living education from master books. He loves that. It's working well. For my other child, I am moving over to math on the level. So this is a math program that I have looked at since before I started homeschooling, and it really helps you kind of, it's not like a math curriculum that you work through. It's all the math concepts that your child needs to learn over time, and it gives you the lessons and the tools to do that with. And so I look at concepts we're needing to learn and ways that I can pull that into the unit study and things that I can do with that. And so I kind of pull math together so that I've got that for my 10-year-old. And I have a feeling that once we do this a few times, my 8-year-old's going to want to jump in with my 10-year-old and abandon math lessons for living education. And if that's the case, that's totally fine. But if he wants to keep doing what he's doing, that is fine too. But an example would be, again, for our Middle Ages unit, I'm going to be using books from the Circumference series, which most of them are geometry concepts, but not all of them. A lot of them are reviews, so those will go in the book basket, and the ones that are new concepts, I'll actually take some time to teach those concepts to my child and give him some activities and ways to practice using those skills. So the last step that I have when I'm planning a unit study is all my extras and all my final touches. So I go through and I look and I see, are there any people or events or things that we might want to add to our timeline, and I'll make a little print out a little worksheet for the kids so that they can add that to their timeline as we hit that place. If I need to print out any worksheets or gather any materials for science experiments or any of that kind of stuff, I will, or any just additional ideas that didn't fit into any of those categories, I will pull those things together. And I keep track of all of this in a table on Google Docs. And I just have my table with all the sections, and I know that once it's all filled in, the unit study's good to go, ready to go. And that is kind of how I do it. And this whole process, like I said, I don't sit down and just do it all at once. It's multiple sessions over several months, and sometimes I'm just spending 10 or 15 minutes, sometimes I'm spending a few hours, but that is kind of how I do it. Let me know if you have any questions below about how I do my unit studies, and also let me know if you still want to see the plan with me video. That's kind of a total disaster. You can see how these things are kind of spread out and kind of go back and forth a little bit, and so it's really hard to like do a hey, plan with me, but I tried. So if you guys still want to see that, let me know. If not, I totally understand. And also, I would love to find ways to share with you guys a little bit more of my unit study plans, at least my lesson plans when I'm done, if that would be helpful for you. My chart that I have at the end that shows kind of what my plan is. If that would be helpful, let me know, and I'll try to get a website up and I can have like a PDF free download or something on there so that you guys can use that for ideas. Maybe if that's helpful, I don't know, let me know. But anyway, that is what I do right now as I plan unit studies. I feel like I'm still kind of learning and figuring out and playing with things and finding exactly what works best for our family. So some of this might change, but for the most part, this is kind of what has been working and the basics of what I do. And if you guys are interested in more homeschooling content, from curriculum reviews to unit study guides to homeschool hauls or anything in between, go ahead and subscribe below, and be sure to hit the bell notification to make sure that the videos make it to your inbox. If you don't hit the bell, they might not get there because of the algorithms. But I hope that you had a wonderful 4th of July weekend, and I can't wait to talk to you again soon. I'll talk to you later. Bye.